There we go. So I want to welcome you all. My name is Julie Ryan. I work for Indwell, and Indwell is a member of the Vision SoHo Alliance. It's so exciting to see so much interest in this project. We have over 70 people registered for this meeting, and I recognize lots of names and faces here, people from the neighborhood and from the city and from the heritage community, among other groups. So welcome to you all. In June, we held our first community meeting, and more than 40 people joined in to learn about the project, ask questions, and give feedback. Now that we are further along in the planning process, we wanted to share some updates with you. And as we look with excitement to the future of the old Victoria Hospital lands and the new homes that will be created there, we acknowledge the significance of this land has had. For thousands of years, this land was cared for and was home to our Indigenous friends and their ancestors before them. In particular, this site is situated on the traditional territories of the Anishinaabe, Haudenosaunee, Lenape, and Arawandaren peoples, all of whom have long-standing relationships to the land of Southwestern Ontario and the City of London. The First Nations communities of our local area include Chippewa of the Thames First Nation, Oneida Nation of the Thames, and Munsee Delaware Nation. And in our region, there are 11 First Nation communities, as well as a growing Indigenous urban population. Vision SoHo Alliance values the significant historical and contemporary contributions of local and regional First Nations and of all the original peoples of Turtle Island. So let's jump right in. We have an agenda here, a presentation of about a half an hour where you'll see an introduction to what is Vision SoHo. You'll learn a little bit about the project design, heritage considerations, and the zoning changes that we are seeking from the City of London. So let's get going with, I want to welcome Sylvia Harris, Chair of the Vision SoHo Alliance, and Sister Joan Atkinson from the London Affordable Housing Foundation.
Thank you, Julie. I'm just going to switch over screens here. Apologies here. Thank you for having us this evening. My name is Sylvia Harris, and I am the chair of the SoHo Alliance, and I'm here with my friend and colleague, Sister Joan Atkinson, and we're going to give you a brief overview of who we are as an alliance, how we've been working together over the last year and a half or so, and our general plan, and then sort of our estimated timeline over the next few months. And then we're going to turn it over to our architects for the site, who are going to walk you in more detail through the plan. So I'll turn it over to you, Sister Joan. You're on mute there, Sister Joan.
Thank you, and I'm delighted to be here. I'm chair of the London Affordable Housing Foundation Board, and we are one of 6 nonprofit housing groups that were brought together really at the urging of the London Community Foundation to see what we could do in a creative way to add to the urgent need in the city for more affordable housing. And so the groups that are represented are the Indwell Community Homes, Zarin Development Corporation, Homes Unlimited, the London Affordable Housing Foundation, Chelsea Green Home Society, and the Italian Seniors Project. All of us are not-for-profit housing providers. And we see great possibility in this former hospital lands. At one level, we see it connected with many people in London who received treatment when the Victoria Hospital was operating and the Children's Hospital was operating. And now we are trying to reimagine this place and turn it back to a kind of community living space for us. So you see there our mission to maximize the site's opportunity for both social inclusion, neighborhood integration, accessibility, and environmental sustainability for the highest and best community benefit. That's both to people who will live there as well as to the wider London community.
Thanks, Sister Joan.
Good.
Okay, thank you so much. So just an overview of what we propose to the city, and our development plans include, so together as 6 nonprofit affordable housing developers, we're going to be developing 7 buildings on the site to a total of around 675 total units. All of these will be rental. Approximately 275 will be market, but majority of the units will be affordable, ranging under a number of different rents. But we know that 120 of that 400 will be deeply affordable and supportive, and those will be the units that Indwell will provide through the redevelopment of the 2 heritage buildings on site. We're going to be doing a range of unit types, 1, 2, and 3 bedrooms, to really maximize the social inclusion and be able to reach a number of different Londoners who are in need of housing. Again, the key feature of our proposal is restoring the existing heritage buildings, and we will be designating those buildings through the development process. Another key feature of our development is that we're doing 1 story of underground parking for the new buildings on the site, as well as across the street on Colburn. And then the city itself is redeveloping the corner of Colburn and Waterloo, and that is going to be a new city park. And so that's what is seen in front of the War Memorial building, but our designs will be fully integrated into that, although we aren't building that corner out ourselves. So we've been working together for quite a while. Since August 2020 actually is when we first gathered to submit our request for qualifications to the city in October. In early 2021, our proposal was formally accepted, and then we offered the city to purchase the land, which was also awarded. We met with you all earlier this year to talk about our development plans at a high level, but now we're here in a more formal way to talk about our zoning changes that we're undertaking. And then we will be going to we've been to the Latch Committee on Heritage, but we will be going to them in a more formal way on November 10th around the Heritage Planning designation, and then to Planning and Environment Committee on November 22nd. And that's the key meeting afterwards for council approval to get all of our planning permissions that we need to start building early or mid next year, depending on how we line things up. So I will turn it to Jim and Tim from Nicholas and Sheffield Architects to give you more of an in-depth look at our design.
Thank you, Sylvia. I'm just going to start off first to put the project in context for those that may not have been part of the community meeting back in the early part of the summer. It's really just to frame it for a video that we're going to show you in a minute. In terms of the project location, it's north of the Thames River and east of Wellington Street, so the old Victoria Hospital lands. And some of the early work and study that we did was with the city and with the Alliance group was to study the historic building massing on the property, to analyze what the current zoning in place would actually allow us to build, and then finally come up with a solution that we feel, when you see our presentation in the video, looks like it could have always been there. So I'm going to stop with that because I'd like to turn it over to Tim to get the exciting part.
Thanks, Jim. Okay, so again, my name's Tim Wickens, and I'm a principal here at Nicholas and Sheffield Architects, and I'm going to share with you a brief video. I'll just bring it up here. I don't know if you can see that now. All right, sorry about that. Let's try that again. Can you see that?
Yes.
Okay, great. Sorry about that. So just going to share with you a brief video to describe the architectural and the urban design aspects of the Vision SoHo Alliance project. So looking northwest towards the downtown from the corner of South and Colborne, we can see the two remaining heritage buildings highlighted there in blue, and this future proposed civic park undertaken by the City of London in the foreground as the kind of foundation of the design of the new project. And of course, along with the members of the Vision SoHo Alliance team, each of them kind of a unique, bringing their own kind of unique focus as housing providers, unique focus in culture to the project. And then we can kind of launch right into the design of the project. So the main western block is crisscrossed with a number of through block connections. This one being a vehicular connection that connects to, I'm just going to pause it there, connects to surface parking as well as the underground parking level that Sylvia mentioned earlier. And then in the orange, you can see the pedestrian connections that run east-west through the site and connect it to a network of exterior spaces, including other north-south pedestrian connections. And when we get to this corner at Hill and Colborne, looking southwest now, you can see that the heritage buildings and the surrounding context provide a kind of an inspiration for the height for the buildings, and they respond to that. On Hill Street, it drops down to 3 stories as a townhouse model facing the houses across the street. This is one of the pedestrian through block connections, and the idea is that these will be activated by townhouse entrances to the adjacent buildings and lit to be safe connections through the block and to that civic space. And the design of the buildings and their frontages is meant to incorporate a variety of scale of features to make them friendly for the pedestrian realm, including the pathways that connect to the sidewalk and the gates and garden piers and entry canopies. And then again here, you can see the context defining the alignment of the buildings so they fit into the neighborhood, where the frontages align with adjacent buildings that have been in the neighborhood for the past century or so. So these through block connections also connect to a network of courtyards that are defined by these points. And we can see a video from the interior proposed of one of those courtyards that would be outdoor amenity spaces to complement the civic space in front of the Children's War Memorial Building, but outdoor amenity spaces for the individual buildings themselves. Again, the health services building, you can see the materiality of these buildings having stone bases and stone accents with brick masonry. And that's, of course, being picked up in the various buildings across the site on both the east and west blocks. And then, of course, in addition to providing that housing for the people within the buildings, you can see that the main purpose of these buildings is framing that public space that the community shares. both within the Soho community and then the larger London community, of course. And that's the presentation. I'll turn it back over to Julie for.
Yeah, thanks so much, Tim. I'm sure you're generating lots of questions. We've got a few more areas that we want to cover here before we get to questions. We're going to hear from Sylvia, who's going to talk both about heritage and some of the zoning changes that we are going to be asking for from the city.
Thanks, Julie. Just to catch us up here. So yeah, I'm sure you all are interested in a variety of aspects of the site. One of the things we want to share with you all and is our approach to the heritage preservation. So I'm sure you're all aware of the history of the site and that most of the buildings that used to be there are no longer with us, but there are two on the main block that we are keeping. The first is the Health Services Building, and it was built in 1921 to originally house the Western School of Medicine until 1965 when that moved to its current location on Western's campus, and then it transitioned into the Health Services Building for a lot of research and office and administrative services. So that is the first one that Indwell is looking to preserve. The second is the War Memorial Children's Hospital that was constructed in 1922, and that was in operation until 1985 as a hospital, but it was continuing in other operations up until recent memories. And both of these buildings have a special place in the history of London, as well as people in the community, people who are alive today, and even people on our committee have had children born in this building. We just led a gentleman through one of Indwell's other buildings that went to medical school in the Health Services Building. So the opportunity to redevelop these buildings, preserve them, and bring them into life again is something that Indwell takes very seriously, and we will do this with all caution and sensitivity around the features that we can work with. Unfortunately, we can't bring you inside of the building because of the mold contamination that's been underway for the last number of years. So the buildings were gutted, and there are parts that were demolished and stabilized. You can see the hoarding that's on the outside of the window to keep people out. But we all know what happens to old buildings when they're vacant and people are looking for homes and dry places to stay. And unfortunately, that's allowed a lot of water penetration over the last 2.5 years. That has created a tremendous amount of mold growth in the building. So this is a picture of the outside of the Health Services Building. But we have some photos from the inside. This is a picture of myself actually on one of our tours. And this is the kind of outfit that you would have to wear if we were to bring you through, which isn't that comfortable. So unfortunately, we can't provide that for everybody. But with the mold growth that was happening over the last number of years, we've done extensive research and study of the impacts of this, and that will impact our ability to preserve some of the features on the interiors of the building. But we will work to clean that mold wherever we can and preserve whatever we can. But overall, our intention is on the outside and exterior of the buildings to repair and preserve those on the exterior. And we can talk about the windows shortly. But here are some of the features that we will be working with. So there's a lot of terrazzo flooring in both buildings that's original, and that's in fairly good condition that we can keep. The stairwells are in a moderate condition, but they are historic in nature. So we will have to bring them up to code, but we'll be looking to do that in a historically sensitive way. The key feature of the health services building is the auditorium in the center of the building. And that was a gathering place for the students, obviously, and we would be looking to redevelop that into a gathering place, both for our tenants and the outside community. So this space is going to be really important to us. We will preserve what we can, but unfortunately there's been a lot of water penetration into this space. And so the plaster and the detailing around the ceilings won't be able to be saved, but what we replace it with will be as close to replica as we possibly can. So there's some acoustic sound panels that we won't be able to replace or save either. So we'll be looking closer at that with our heritage consultant and the city staff. Similarly to the health services building, the war memorial, most of our efforts around preservation will be on the outside. The windows themselves, we will be taking a closer look at, but most of them we will be replacing them with replicas, both primarily for our energy perspective. We will be redeveloping these buildings to passive house standards, which have extremely high energy requirements. And one of those important features of that is windows. So we need passive house certified windows. But we will be building a replica that looks similar to the original to replace them with. Here's some pictures of the interior spaces, just to give you an idea of what that looks like. Similarly to the health services, the flooring in some of the spaces we can save, and we will be keeping that. The stairwells will be working with those to maintain them but get them up to code compliance. On the sides of the building, there were sunrooms that we will be maintaining the window structures, 8 pane over 8 pane. Our replica windows will match those as well. So in terms of the process that we're undertaking, the designation process has started. Staff is working with us on developing a statement of cultural heritage value and heritage attributes that will be going to the London Advisory Committee on Heritage November 10th. And then out of that, we will be getting these buildings designated based on what we confirm in the statement. So that's the piece on heritage. We do want to recognize that many of you, if you are a neighbor, received a planning notification in your mailbox about the changes that we are making to the site regarding the official plan, the secondary plan, and the zoning bylaw. So we wanted to address some of those directly this evening. And I'm here with our planning consultant, Harry. I'm an bachelor last name, Harry, but Harry from Zelinka Planning. And so we just wanted, it was a very complicated and technical document, but we wanted to break that down for you in a simplified way so that you understand the changes that we are making to the site and what we aren't changing. So part of the notification was bringing to light some things around, some language around changing the zoning boundary. So just to show you what that means is that the zoning boundary is this blue dotted line. That's where the zone is drawn right now. But based on our building plans, we'd be moving that farther down to the south to reflect how we are going to be dividing the site up between our partners. There was a lot of language in the notification around the vacant land condominium related to the official plan. And essentially, it was a lot of language, but it's essentially just one change to the official plan because right now the London official plan doesn't recognize a building as a unit in this kind of condo structure. So instead of a unit being in an individual building, the whole building itself is going to be a unit, and then we are going to be creating a condo corporation to govern the jointly shared features of the site, like the walkways, the landscaping, and the underground parking garage. So there was also some language around the portion of the site that's on Hill Street. So it mentions that we're changing it from a low rise to a mid-rise designation under the secondary plan. This is slightly misleading because we're actually not changing what the allowable height is along Hill Street. It does allow 5 stories, which is what we're building, but we are adding on an apartment building as a permitted use in the zoning bylaw, which affects that classification to mid-rise. There is a notification in there around parking to be 0.5 spaces per unit. This is actually already allowed in the zoning bylaw, but we needed to put it into our application because we're looking for the site to be developed as a whole. And this parking ratio will be applied to all the new buildings. And then we are going to be building some patios and terraces that will encroach over the lot line, which is very close to our buildings. Similarly, there along the south portion of the site, we aren't looking to exceed any heights that are allowed. We're building 8 stories, which is allowed. The parking ratio is allowed. We just had to make sure that we include it, so it's all looking at the site as a whole, and then similarly encroachment for terraces, patios, and porches. And then for the Italian seniors portion of the project on the other side of Colburn, we aren't exceeding any height limitations there, so we can build up to 11 stories. There's a piece about allowing residential on the ground floor. So right now the secondary plan doesn't allow for that on the 4 corners. And then Italian Seniors Project needed a access for vehicles off of South Street. So that's in there as well. There's other technical language regarding setbacks and rear yard items and landscaping that if you do have questions, Harry's here to answer those. But we know that people typically care about parking and height and those kinds of things. So we just wanted to explain those to you as part of this presentation. So Harry, do you have anything you would like to add to that?
Thank you, Sylvia. Yes, it's Harry Frucios from Zelenka Priamo. We've been retained by the Vision SoHo group to assist with acquiring the necessary planning approvals for this project. Sylvia gave a great summary of the amendments that are required. I just wanted to sort of dwell a little bit further that there are amendments required to the official plan, the London plan, but as Sylvia stated, they're really technical in nature to allow for the condominium structure to proceed as proposed and allow this to be a comprehensive development scheme, basically functioning as a single entity. The main amendments are really to the secondary plan, the old Victoria Hospital and secondary plan and the zoning. But then again, those are more technical in nature and still are intended to implement the city's overall vision for this area. So again, as Sylvia mentioned, if there's any questions specific to our amendments, I'd be pleased to answer them for you. Thank you.
So we're at a point where and look at that, we're right on time. That's incredible. So we're at a Q&A portion of our evening tonight. And by now, a lot of us are pretty familiar with Zoom, but just wanted to give you a little tutorial in case you're wondering how you can participate. So you can either send a question to me and type your question, and I'll be watching for that and read it. Or you can raise your hand, and you do that. There's a little button at the bottom of your screen where you can click raise your hand, and you'll be invited to unmute in order, and then we'll take your questions. You can say them if you prefer to share your question that way. So I see a hand raised and I'm trying to get to my get to my comments. So I don't see any messages yet, but I see Laura Wall's hand up. So we'll ask her to unmute and.
Hi, yes, Julie. It's not a question. It's just that the question function isn't there, and the chat has been disabled. So just wanted to let you know that. Okay,
I must have done something wrong. I think I've just re-enabled it. So why don't you try now? Here we go. BJ's got the test question. Excellent. Welcome your questions, comments. Okay, will there be a playground on the premises?
Do you want me to take that, Julie?
Sure.
Sure. So there's not going to be a play structure as part of the Vision SoHo Alliance development. The park that the city is developing, it doesn't have a playground designed either. But that is going to be the open space that's intended for this site as well as for the larger neighborhood. There are some other features, and I know the city has done a lot of design and consulting work with the neighborhood on that, and I think that design work is available on the city's website.
There is a playground structure in a park just south of this on Nelson Street.
Yeah, Meredith Park.
Yeah.
So next question, have there been any challenges or pushback from the city in getting zoning permits?
Perhaps I can answer that, Julie. We're still in the process of working with city staff on getting the zoning approvals. The applications have been made. We've been working very closely and very well with staff, and we anticipate that we'll have a good process moving forward.
Just to add to that, the city sees this as a tremendous opportunity. They understand the importance of affordable housing, the crisis that the city's in, as well as just the special nature of all of us working together. And so it's actually been a really good process working with them. It's a large site, so there's a lot of complications, but considering all the things that could go wrong, they've been going pretty well. So knock on wood. That's why we're here tonight, to get as part of that process, and then we'll go to Planning and Environment Committee in a few weeks.
So the next question is, now that this area will be densely populated, how will the neighborhood be managed from a security standpoint? Any thoughts on security? Maybe Jim or Tim?
Well, I think, Tim, you can add to this, but I mean, if anyone has ever read Jane Jacobs' Life and Death of the Great American Cities, and I actually remember having this same conversation for one of Homes Unlimited's buildings to the east on Nelson Street. The community was very concerned about some of the things that were happening in their neighborhood prior to the development. And what's really important here is that when we add more people living here and eyes on the street, as Jane Jacob would call it, that's actually going to help to improve. You know, people start to look out for one another. They're interested in what's happening in their neighborhood and their community. And that in and of itself helps to improve security.
I think too that all of the buildings will have their own security system, and the tenants will have secure access. I mean, that's one of the things I think people are looking for in Indwell's buildings, but I know for the other Vision SoHo partners is that primarily they need a safe and affordable place to live. And so we as partners take that very seriously. And some of the design features we've incorporated into the site around security cameras. Every building will have that, as well as fob and security systems and site lighting. So that did come up in our last meeting. There are a lot of pedestrian access points, and ensuring that those are well lit and people feel safe and secure to walk down them. So that's something that we will take very seriously and enact through our design.
Yeah, I think to pick up on that, the idea of the eyes on the street that Jim mentioned, and the site lighting, that all those pedestrian connections through the block are generally treated like street frontages. So there are sort of small laneways where there are going to be overlook opportunities, and there are going to be entrances from individual units at grade. So the idea is that it's meant to be, the entire site is meant to be designed as a very safe pedestrian space.
Okay. So there's a question about bicycle parking available at each building or a community lockup. I'm pretty sure, you can correct me if I'm wrong, there's bicycle parking in the underground parking lot, and Indwell will likely have some in the basement. Is that correct, of the Indwell buildings?
Yeah, basement and outside secured separate bike storage. Harry, we do have to have 0.75 bicycles for every unit. That's a city requirement. So that's quite a lot of bikes that we're building space for, and it has to be secure indoor bike storage. So there will be a lot of access to bikes. As well as Indwell does not bike storage, but we are also looking for mobility scooter storage. So that will have power access in those interior spaces.
So here's a question about the environmental aspects of the proposed building development, including energy efficiency, water runoff, gardens, EV chargers, etc. It looked like there might be solar panels on the roof.
Jim and Tim, do you want to take that for the new development?
Well, sure. I mean, we're very early days, as we've talked about, that we're into regulatory approvals at this point, and we are investigating a number of different options for sustainability and energy efficiency, including, potentially geothermal. The solar panels that you see on the roofs of the buildings at this point could be anything from a domestic hot water preheat system to solar photovoltaic. But again, we're with the team and all of the housing providers. We're really reviewing all the options available to us right now to do everything we can to hopefully aim to get this to be a carbon-free project.
Go ahead.
Sorry, Sylvia, I just wanted to add that we've worked with a lot of these housing providers in the past, and I think for the most part, all of our projects that we've done together as a team have had some form of solar, either solar thermal or solar photovoltaic on the roof. So that's the other aspect of it, is it's anticipated based on past performance, I guess.
All of us are going to be going for Canada Mortgage and Housing Corporation CMHC funding, and those have very strict energy benchmarks that you need to hit. So we're all hitting them in different ways. Indwell's hitting them through a strong concentration on the envelope through passive house design. Other people are looking at, other groups are hitting them in terms of their design and mechanical systems. Together as a group, we're evaluating a proposal from Enwave to do district energy, which is a geothermal system that's carbon free. And so I think for all of us, we're looking at energy performance, but also getting off greenhouse gases and our carbon impact. So we're kind of in the middle of that as we speak, as we get closer to construction drawings.
Okay, so we're seeing lots of good, nice comments, and thank you for those. Next question is, can someone speak to the timing overall of the development?
Sure, I don't mean to take all the questions, but I'm happy to jump in. So we're in the heavy lifting of the planning right now. So that's the changes regarding the official plan, secondary plan, and the zoning bylaw. And then we're also doing site plan at the same time because we know that these units need to be under construction and open as soon as we can. So if we are able to achieve that by the end of the year, that would be great. Heritage is part of that. Then we'll be moving into our own construction drawings, which will take a number of months. But we hope to be able to start on this sometime next year, spring at the earliest, spring, summer, to taking advantage of the construction season. Yeah, a number of us are tied together with our construction schedule because of the underground parking that will be constructed and as part of the main site. Indwell will have its own construction timelines related to the restoration of the heritage buildings. But we also hope to begin sometime next year.
I think too, we can't, not to walk away imagining that all 6 developments are going to happen exactly at the same time. There isn't enough space for construction equipment to move around. So we'll have to time out how this development will happen. But we're not that far along in our planning.
But the great thing is that we're working together. And so
Yes.
over the next 3 years, this whole site will be built out. And people will be living here a lot sooner than if it was one group just doing it one phase at a time.
Exactly.
Okay, next question. Being a property owner in the neighborhood, I'm curious as to if there've been any projections or research done into the effect on real estate values in the community. I know Indwell's done some studies on our own buildings. I don't know if there's any others.
Yeah, the research that we did on our properties, because we do get this question a lot, is that we have had in terms of impacts, it's only been positive, but as we've seen in all the market, the land values are going up exponentially. And so while we can't say that we add to that, but we know for sure that we don't detract from that. And these buildings will be beautifully designed and well maintained and taken care of. And so when you consider the current condition of the land and what the neighboring values are impacted on it, it's going to be a benefit to have this infill.
Thanks, Sylvia. Okay, the next question. Does the proposed development have any connections with the current building taking place to the south? If not directly, is there at least discussion to ensure the 2 projects dovetail? So I think you're referring to the Medallion building going across the street. We do not have connections with them. I don't think that we've had any recent conversations with them. Is there anybody on the team that would, yeah. But we do plan to make that happen in the future so that we can be good neighbors and work together.
I think you can, Tim and Jim in their visuals were you could see the contrast to the scale between the 2 projects happening. Obviously the one to the south of us is much larger in scale, 20 plus stories, because we're trying to achieve 2 different things. We're building at a really human scale around maximizing affordability. And the city has been actually the one that's coordinating, not between us, but is coordinating the redevelopment plans for each of the phases. So we're trusting that, as the old Victoria Hospital lands gets built out, that it will be built out under the guidelines of the secondary plan.
I'm going to jump to Martha, who's got her hand up before, and then we'll go back to the chat questions.
I just did put my question in. I could the question about the property values. I just can speak to a development when we were doing our research about Back to the River. There was a study done after they had done their redevelopment and showed that the neighborhoods around the river, there was about, like for $1 spent, there was $30 in economic spin-off. So that would attribute back into business and to property values escalating as a result. And pride in community was something that just resonated with their project. Not the same project, but they've seen it. It demonstrates that there will be benefit to the community.
Great. So a question from Jan, wondering how do we determine who moves into the building? Is there a screening criteria, or do you work with various other nonprofits looking to find housing for clients? Why don't I ask Joan to talk about, each group does their intake a little bit different, and I'll ask Joan to talk about how the London Affordable Housing Foundation does, and then maybe Sylvia to talk about how Indwell, and then there's process in between.
Okay, thanks, Julie. I think we don't have a standard procedure for who might possibly live here. Since once the building is up and we are ready to rent, each of the nonprofits have their own process. The wider community is given notice when we are ready to receive applications. And as the building proceeds, we know that all of the groups will probably get phone calls from people asking if they can get their name on a waiting list, or can they have an apartment on the 3rd floor at the South Wing or whatever. And we can't say yes to that, but we did, the last building we completed on Dundas Street, we accepted names of people who were interested, and we made very clear to people this was not an application for a unit. And when we were ready to rent up, then all those people, if they gave us contact information, were notified, and if then they wanted to come forward and put in an application. Because people want to get their name once they see a building started, they want to get their name out there, and it could be 2 to 3 years. And by the time the building is ready to rent, many of those people have found other places, whether it's in the city or they've moved beyond the city. So we simply send out expressions of interest, and then we notify them when the building is ready to rent.
Claudio, I think, wants to also speak to that. Julie.
Okay. Oh, sorry, Claudio. We'll get you to unmute. Claudio is from the Italian Seniors Project, and they'll be on the Colburn South Street building.
So following on what Sister Joan said, yes, we all have different processes, but a part of the question also talked about how we deal with other nonprofits. Our group has worked both with seniors and non-seniors, of course. In our last project that Residents Ortona on Hamilton Road, one of our board of directors had contacts with Cheshire Homes. So we worked with their group to specifically outfit some of the accessible units for their specific needs and for their access to the building to see their clients. And those are people that are handicapped. But we also worked with the Royal Canadian Legion. They identified people which were homeless vets that we were able to give 10 units to. So the answer is there are really different ways depending on the clientele and the focus of each group. The standard way, of course, is a waiting list. And for those that know this business, we did not advertise our last business, but last building, which opened in September last year. From the time we started construction to the time we opened it up for the first tenants, we had close to 300 people. People find out and they called our other buildings. And so we just make a list and then we give them applications. And then obviously the ones with the greatest needs and that meet the criteria for affordable housing are then chosen, really just, first come, first serve, basically. So there really are different methods and different groups like Indwell has, I'll let Sylvia talk to that. They have a very unique clientele as well that they deal with. So
Thanks, Claudia. Yeah, so Indwell is building a supportive housing. So as the other groups are doing a mix of market and affordable, both of our buildings will be entirely affordable, and there will be supports provided in the building. And we go through a very extensive screening process to ensure that the folks that are moving into our buildings are the right fit, and they are a good fit for the supports that we're going to provide. I think that overall, though, the Alliance itself is looking to achieve some things collectively together. And so we have been in conversation with some nonprofits and then some Indigenous partners as well, because we understand the need and the impact of homelessness, particularly on urban Indigenous populations. So we're looking at how we can give those tenants a priority through partnerships with other existing organizations in the city. And then the other buildings also have a property management firm that's doing this on their behalf, whereas Indwell owns, operates, and maintains and manages that intake process directly as an organization.
Thank you, Sylvia. Hopefully that answers some of the questions. So Laura Wall points out an Urban League panel tomorrow night, and she's got a Zoom link in there for you. It's a question about who do I contact to get onto the mailing list. I would so that because you've actually signed up for this, we do have your email, and so you're kind of already on the list. But I want to use this opportunity to point out the Vision SoHo .ca website. And this is going to be a tool that we'll be using over the coming years to let you know about our progress. There is a contact form there, so if you wanted to send a more direct message, you can do that. There's a great video there that describes a bit more about the partners and the projects. So I would encourage you to go to visionsoho.ca and check back at that site, because that'll be our main tool for sharing updates. Okay, so another question. What's the plan for the additional vehicles once the buildings are occupied? The presentation showed only 0.5 parking spaces per unit, but with 1, 2, and 3 bedroom units, it's naive to expect that this is enough parking.
I can speak in part to that. The city's minimum parking requirement for these lands, or for the majority of these lands right now, is 0.5 spaces per unit for the new apartment buildings. And that's in part to encourage alternative modes of transportation other than the vehicles. We can say that the proposed development proposes more than 0.5. We're around the 0.7 spaces per unit overall. But I would also ask the various members to sort of provide their experience with what the parking demands are for their types of development. But from a city's point of view, we are meeting the minimum requirement and actually exceeding it.
I could say,
go ahead, Sister
Oh,
Jo.
the last 2 projects that we have built, we built the first one, which was a 27 unit building. The city wanted 1.5 units. There aren't 7 people in that building who own a car. It's within walking distance of shopping, and there is always more than plenty of space, and some of the neighbors use the extra spaces from time to time. In the building where we are on Dundas Street, very few people have vehicles, and there's only 20 spaces for a 41 unit building. So that's just under 0.5. And there's never been any problem with parking. So, and there are other parking lots in the area if something changed, but we think we've convinced the city that, and again, with climate change and people's use of transportation maybe changing, we don't need as much parking as originally we had thought, and the city recommended. So we've been able to successfully convince the building that, or to convince the city that the buildings we have built, there's plenty of parking there.
Just to jump on that, Sister Joan, I think as affordable housing providers, we've all experienced not your typical parking demand given people's limited incomes that are living with us. And because this is a majority of affordable housing units that will be on the site, the parking demand will be less. And Indwell is building over a quarter of the affordable housing units, and our parking ratios are extremely low. At the most, we have around 25% of our tenants have cars, but specifically for these buildings, we anticipate it being closer to 10. So we have 0.5 for the site overall, which meets the city's requirements. But if you look at the specific needs of each of the buildings, it's actually a lot lower. And because of Indwell doing what it does, it decreases it even more. But if we were building all market, I would understand your concerns.
And this was brought up earlier as well, that we are providing bike spaces at the rate of 0.75 per unit, which translates to around 500 potential bike spaces. And combined with the fact that the city now is improving its biking infrastructure to encourage more biking, we feel that that's going to be adding to the opportunities for alternative transit as well for the property.
It's very exciting, to be so close to the bus rapid transit on Wellington. There's a bus that goes right by the site all the time on South Street. And the one of the protected bike lanes on Colburn begins actually not at our site, but at a little further north. So there's lots of great transportation. That's one of the reasons this is such an ideal site for this development. So, and I guess moving on, but connected to that, has the city's active transportation been involved in discussing safe cycling routes in the area? I think the question is no, but certainly something that we will engage with as we move forward. So here's a question from a neighbor. I'm a neighbor and really appreciate the work on getting affordable housing. Can we provide input and a call to action to the city as part of this density addition? If we can add more to existing playgrounds around the area and any other empty spaces be taken into consideration as parking spaces. So a neighbor wanting to kind of really provide input to the city.
Yes, you can, for sure. You can, Harry, is that the city clerk that you would put your comments to for Planning and Environment Committee?
Well, I will add that the planner handling the file, Mr. Leif Maitland, is on this is in this open house. So I'm sure he's taking notes right now, and we'll take these back for consideration.
But for sure to reach out to your counselor if you're
Yes.
in the neighborhood, or all the counselors. We know that they're actively right now looking at a plan to build as much affordable housing across the city. The mayor made the announcement last year that he would like to build 3,000 units in the next 5 years. This is a huge step towards that, but obviously 400 is still a ways away from 3,000. So if you want to encourage them to make the commitment and put the financial backing behind that, as well as the planning approvals that are required, please, that would be so helpful.
Great. Okay, I've got a question from Laura wondering if there's an opportunity for the overall project to build a community benefits framework to consider how procurement and employment can be leveraged to optimize returns to the local community. So I'm not sure if we want to ask Laura, this is a pretty specific thing, the community benefits framework, and some folks might need a little more information on that. Can we invite Laura to unmute? I'm just not seeing her. Maybe Nicholas could do that.
Hi. Hi.
Yep, here we go.
Yeah. So yeah, thanks for that, Julie. Just community benefits is something that is been in existence across different jurisdictions for a while, but really just coming of age in London. But it is the idea that when there are major projects such as this and medium-sized projects, but that there may be a way not only to engage the community as all of you have in terms of what's important to them and what will meet their needs, but also to look at, are there some other things that can be added on, such as who are the people that are going to be working on the construction? Is there a way that we can link up with the training programs to ensure that we are maybe perhaps employing people from underrepresented groups to use this as an opportunity for bringing them into the trades? Is there something that can be done in terms of looking at any of the procurement for the construction that can really focus on the local procurement? So these are discussions that can happen that can say, what else can we do with this project to really leverage benefit to the community?
Okay, thanks, Laura. Who wants to take that?
I think that's a great comment, Laura. Thank you for bringing that up. And I think we can build off of that, whether that looks like a specific community benefits agreement. I'm not sure, but we can look at that closer. And I'm sure there's some technical parts of that we're not aware of. But I think we all share, as the Vision SoHo Alliance members, we all share that value, particularly around the local trades and wanting to maximize the economic benefit to Londoners who will be building this, because as Martha mentioned, like the job impact to build almost 700 units is going to be tremendous. And as we like trade unions, this is an important thing for them to prioritize. And if we say in our proposal development that this is something that we want, we've seen contractors respond to that. As Indwell transitioned to building a passive house, they said, this is what we want. If you don't know, then tell us how you're going to learn. So this is something that we could also look at doing. And I think that we'll take this back to the team.
Great. Here's a good question about food. Soho is a food desert without a full-size grocery store. Has anyone approached the group with potential positive news about exploring the opportunity to service the large number of new tenants arriving in the neighborhood? So I'll ask Sister Joan to take that question, and I might be able to add something as well.
Okay, I'll do my best. First of all, our effort in coming together as an alliance of housing providers is to build housing. Now we know around that there are other needs, such as good locations to purchase food and accessibility. That's not primarily our project. So if that's a strong need in the neighborhood, maybe the neighborhood association can approach some of the bigger, food folks like Loblaws and Sobeys and whoever. Have they considered doing that? Have they done a study of what the food needs are in that area? But we couldn't take that on right now. Now, we were given a gift of money by the London Food Bank during the pandemic to do something around food security. Right now, because the planning that needs to be done in order to get the approvals to start construction has to come first, we've tossed around many ideas about what might be possible, but we've made no decisions. So at this point, the primary focus right now is to get some more housing built. And then maybe there are opportunities for, because I know there's a strong community association in the Soho area. That might be something to think about going forward. But right now we can't do that. But if anybody wants to take it on as a project who's out there listening, that I think would be welcome information.
Yeah, it is exciting. I mean, with us bringing in 650 units, Medallion, I think it's over 600 units. So there's going to be quite an influx of new people into the neighborhood. So we are exploring things like a market and other sort of food security programming that is beneficial to people living on a lower fixed income. So stay tuned, more to come. So let's see. I'm just seeing if there are any other questions. There's some comments. The Thames Valley Parkway will be extended to the north side of the river from Wellington eastward and eventually reach Adelaide Street, was a comment. So that's kind of exciting that the city's already wonderful parkways will be extended. Oh, I'm getting some background noise here. I'm going to mute myself for a moment. So I'm not seeing any other questions. There's some great comments in the chat, so I encourage you to check those out. But I'm not seeing a lot of comments here. So it might be time for us to close off.
If you do, just okay, Julie, you're back on. If you do have any further questions, if you go to the Vision SoHo website that Julie was mentioning, we can put it again in the chat there. There is a connection question box that will go directly to one of us, and we'll get back and answer any concerns or questions that you have in the following weeks or months. We'll keep that website active throughout construction. So even as we get into construction season and you have any concerns, we would prefer to hear about it directly than to you to go to another source so that we can address it right away. But we really are so thankful that you took the time out of your evening, and so many of you here, and we're just really thankful for the support that you've shown us, and we definitely are excited to be part of this community. It's a very special one and a very special piece of land in the city to be working on.
Thanks, everyone. Right. We'll see you in the neighborhood. Bye-bye.